The great hall of the alien starship Zirion was bright and shining, filled with strange glowing lights and smooth metal walls that seemed to breathe with life. The Zenari people, tall and elegant with silver blue skin and bright eyes, stood quietly around the edges of the hall. They watched as their leader, Commander Lyrathe, walked forward with grace and confidence. Lyrathe was known across the galaxy as one of the smartest minds of her species. She had spent years studying the stars and building the finest machines. She believed that no other race could match the Zenari in knowledge or skill, and especially not the humans, who were visiting for the first time. As Lyrathe reached the center of the hall, a soft hum filled the air. The large door at the far end opened, and Dr. Aiden Cross, Earth's top scientist and diplomat, entered with a small group of humans. They wore neat uniforms, but compared to the Zenari, they looked simple and plain. The Zenari watched with curious eyes, whispering softly to each other. They expected humans to be nervous, perhaps even afraid. But Aiden walked calmly, his eyes steady and thoughtful. When he reached Lyrathe, he gave a small, polite bow. "Commander Lyrathe," Aiden said, his voice clear and calm. "It is an honor to meet you." Lyrathe nodded, her expression cool. "Welcome to the Zirion, Dr. Cross. I hope your journey through space was comfortable for your kind." There was a slight smile on her lips, though her tone carried a hint of pride, as if reminding Aiden that humans were far from home, and she held the power here. Aiden smiled gently, not missing her meaning. It was long, but worth it to meet such a great civilization. They sat at a large glass table, where a strange blue light floated between them, like a small star. Lyrathe looked at Aiden carefully. "We have heard of humans, creatures who only recently learned to travel between stars. We expected someone different. Tell me, Dr. Cross, what makes humans believe they are ready to speak as equals with the Zenari?" The hall grew quiet. The other Zenari leaned in, waiting for Aiden's answer. Aiden did not look nervous. Instead, he leaned forward slightly, his eyes thoughtful. "Commander, it's true that we are new to space, but sometimes a new way of thinking can see things that old eyes have missed." Lyrathe raised an eyebrow. "You think you see something we do not?" Aiden nodded politely. "Maybe. Maybe there are things we could discover together." Lyrathe smiled again, but this time her smile was sharper. "Humans are clever in their way. I see. But cleverness is not the same as wisdom. You must understand, Dr. Cross, that we have solved problems that your people cannot even imagine." "Perhaps," Aiden agreed. "But sometimes imagination is what lets us solve problems in the first place." Lyrathe blinked, surprised by his quick response. She had expected him to stay silent or agree humbly. Instead, he looked at her with calm confidence, like a man who had thought long and hard about the universe. "You speak well," Lyrathe said slowly, "but words are easy. I wonder if your mind is as sharp as your tongue." Aiden smiled again, his eyes kind but sharp. "I would be happy to learn from you, Commander, and perhaps share some ideas of my own." For a moment, they stared at each other. The blue light on the table flickered, as if it too was waiting to see what would happen next. Lyrathe finally stood, her silver blue robes flowing around her. "Very well, Dr. Cross. Since you wish to share ideas, I will offer you a chance. Tomorrow, you will join me in a Zenari logic simulation, a test of mind and reason. If you can understand even half of it, perhaps we will have more to discuss." The Zenari in the room smiled, sure that their leader had just given the human a challenge too great for his kind. Aiden stood as well, nodding respectfully. "I look forward to it, Commander. After all, learning from each other is why I came." Lyrathe turned away, but her mind was not at ease. Something about Aiden's calm way of speaking stayed with her. He did not seem afraid, though he should be. As she walked away, she thought to herself, "Perhaps these humans are more interesting than I believed." Aiden, meanwhile, watched the glowing walls of the hall and smiled quietly. He knew tomorrow's test would not be easy, but he also knew that humans had always found a way, even when others thought it impossible. The next day, the great hall of the Zirian was filled with soft blue light. Zinari citizens gathered quietly, standing along the smooth walls. Their silver blue eyes sparkled with curiosity and pride. They had come to see their leader, Commander Lirathe, defeat the human in a battle of minds. Aiden Cross stood alone near the center, calm and steady. His face showed no fear, but inside, he knew this was an important moment. He was not only representing himself, but also all of humanity. Commander Lirathe entered the hall, her long robe trailing behind her. She moved gracefully, like she had no doubt of her victory. As she reached the center, she gave Aiden a polite nod, though her eyes showed quiet confidence. "Dr. Cross," she said in a soft but firm voice, "welcome to the Zinari Mind Sphere. Today, we will see if your people's minds are as sharp as their words." "I am honored to take part in this challenge, Commander," Aiden replied, bowing his head slightly. With a wave of her hand, Lirathe summoned a floating sphere of bright light. The sphere began to shift, showing complex shapes, lines, and symbols that moved in patterns. "This is a Zinari logic simulation," she explained. "It presents a problem that requires deep understanding, quick thinking, and perfect reason. Many of our finest minds take hours to solve it. Some never succeed." The Zinari in the hall smiled proudly. They were sure the human would not even understand the first step. Lirathe looked at Aiden, her eyes sharp. "If you wish to leave now, I will not think less of you," she said kindly, though she fully expected him to walk away. But Aiden smiled, calm and polite. "Thank you, Commander, but I will try." A soft murmur moved through the Zinari crowd. They were surprised. Perhaps the human was braver, or more foolish, than they had thought. Lirathe gestured to the glowing sphere. "Then you may begin, Dr. Cross." Aiden stepped forward, studying the shifting patterns carefully. The shapes twisted and turned, forming complex puzzles that required finding hidden connections. At first, he stood very still, only watching. Lirathe raised an eyebrow, thinking, perhaps he does not know what to do. But after a few minutes, Aiden raised his hand and touched one of the glowing lines. To everyone's surprise, the sphere responded, shifting in a way that showed progress. A quiet gasp ran through the hall. Lirathe's eyes narrowed slightly. "Interesting," she said softly. Aiden kept working, moving his fingers gently over the light patterns. Unlike Zinari, who often solved puzzles through strict logic and rules, Aiden approached it differently. Sometimes he paused and smiled slightly, as if seeing something the others could not. Minutes passed. Lirathe watched closely. She noticed that Aiden was not following the usual methods. Instead, he seemed to look at the puzzle from angles she had never thought of. Then, after only 20 minutes, much faster than expected, Aiden took a step back. The sphere of light stopped moving. A soft chime filled the air. Lirathe's eyes widened. The chime was the sound of completion. The puzzle had been solved. The Zinari in the hall whispered in shock. No human was supposed to be able to do this. Aiden turned to Lirathe, calm and respectful. "Thank you for letting me try, Commander. It was an interesting challenge." Lirathe stared at him for a long moment, then walked slowly toward the sphere. She touched it and checked the solution. It was perfect. No errors, no mistakes. She turned to Aiden, trying to hide her surprise. "You solved it," she said quietly. "How?" Aiden smiled gently. "Sometimes, when a problem looks too complicated, it helps to step back, to look at the bigger picture. I didn't try to force it to make sense. I let the pattern speak to me." Lirathe frowned slightly. "That is not how we solve such problems." "Maybe that's why you've never seen it solved this way," Aiden said kindly. For a moment, there was silence in the hall. The Zinari were unsure how to react. Then Lirathe gave a small smile, though her eyes still looked thoughtful. "You are full of surprises, Dr. Cross." "Sometimes," Aiden replied with a smile. Laritha studied him carefully. She had thought humans were simple and weak-minded, but now she was not so sure. She realized that there might be something about humans, something different from her own people, that made them see the world in new ways. The hall was quiet as the Zenari citizens left, whispering to each other. Aiden stood alone, looking around calmly. As Laritha walked away, she thought deeply. Perhaps humans are more than we believed. Perhaps there is more to learn from them than we thought. And in her mind, for the first time, she wondered if Zenari knowledge was truly the highest in the galaxy, or if humanity's strange way of thinking might unlock answers even she had never imagined. Commander Laritha sat alone in her private chamber. The smooth silver walls of her room glowed softly, but her mind was not calm. She stared at a screen in front of her, watching again the recording of Dr. Aiden Cross solving the Zenari logic puzzle. How did he do it? She wondered. No one from another species has ever solved that simulation before. Even many Zenari cannot complete it. She leaned back in her chair, thinking. She had always believed that the Zenari were the most intelligent species in the galaxy. They had the oldest knowledge, the best machines, and the sharpest minds. But now, this human had done something unexpected. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft sound at the door. "Enter," she said. A young Zenari officer stepped in and bowed respectfully. "Commander, the Council wishes to know if the human will be allowed another challenge." Laritha nodded slowly. "Tell the Council. I am considering it." After the officer left, Laritha stood up and walked to the large window of her chamber. Outside, stars sparkled like diamonds in the dark sky. Somewhere among those stars was Earth, the home of these surprising humans. What makes them different? She thought. Meanwhile, in a quiet room on the human ship docked to Zirian, Aiden Cross was talking with his assistant, Maria Singh. "That was amazing, Dr. Cross," Maria said, her eyes full of excitement. "I saw their faces. They didn't believe you could do it." Aiden smiled, but he looked thoughtful. "Yes, but it's not just about solving puzzles, Maria. The Zenari think only in straight lines, logic, reason, order. But humans, we see things differently." Maria tilted her head. "What do you mean?" "Well," Aiden said, leaning back in his chair, "Zenari logic is perfect, but it has limits. They follow strict rules. Humans, on the other hand, think in strange ways. Sometimes we break the rules. Sometimes we imagine things that make no sense, until they work." Maria nodded slowly. "So, that's why you solved the puzzle." "Yes," Aiden said. "I didn't try to force it to fit into Zenari logic. I looked at it like a picture, like a story, and that showed me the way." He smiled, but his eyes were serious. "That's what makes humans special, Maria. We are not always the strongest, not always the fastest, but we imagine, we dream, we find new paths." Maria looked at him with respect. "Do you think the Zenari will understand that?" Aiden's smile faded a little. "I don't know. They are proud. They may not want to believe that someone else, someone new, could show them something they don't know." Back on Zirian, Laritha went to the great library of her people. The walls were filled with glowing books and floating screens. She searched for records of other species, trying to understand if anyone else had shown such strange thinking before. She found nothing. No other race had done what the human had done. Finally, she sat down and watched a recording of Earth's history. She saw pictures of humans building machines, crossing oceans, flying into space. She watched as they solved problems, sometimes with science, sometimes with ideas no Zenari would have tried. Laritha's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Perhaps there is a kind of intelligence that does not follow perfect logic, she thought. Perhaps imagination is a kind of power too. Suddenly, her screen blinked. A message appeared from the High Council. "Commander Laritha, we expect you to remind the humans of their place. They must not believe they are equal to us. Laritha stared at the message. She felt a weight in her chest. But what if they are equal? Or more? She stood up and walked back to the window, looking out at the stars again. At that same moment, Aiden was also looking at the stars from his ship. He wondered what Laritha was thinking. He knew that if the Zenari did not accept humans as equals, future relations would be difficult. But he also knew that humanity had faced hard times before, and had always found a way. The next day, Laritha sent a message to Aiden. "Dr. Cross, I invite you to meet me privately. There are things we must discuss." Aiden smiled when he read the message. Maybe she is starting to see, he thought. As he prepared to meet her, Aiden knew this was more than just a conversation. This was a chance to build a bridge between two worlds. And perhaps together, they could do something neither species could do alone. The soft hum of the Zirian filled the quiet room where Commander Laritha waited. The walls were smooth and silver, and a soft blue light glowed above her. But even in this peaceful place, her mind was full of questions. Why did the humans solve the puzzle so easily? She thought. What kind of thinking do they have that we do not? Soon, the door slid open with a soft sound. Dr. Aiden Cross stepped inside, calm and polite as always. His eyes were curious but respectful. Laritha stood to greet him. "Thank you for coming, Dr. Cross," she said smoothly. "The honor is mine, Commander," Aiden replied with a small smile. She gestured for him to sit across from her. Aiden sat, looking around at the simple but elegant room. "I asked to speak with you," Laritha began, her voice thoughtful, "because I wish to understand. You solved the Zenari mind puzzle in a way none of us expected. How is that possible?" Aiden smiled slightly. "Commander, I believe it's because humans think differently." Laritha raised an eyebrow. "Differently? Explain." Aiden leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. "Your people are masters of logic and reason. You follow clear steps, strict rules, but humans often break rules when solving problems. Sometimes we guess. Sometimes we see patterns that are not clear at first, and sometimes we imagine solutions that don't seem logical until they work." Laritha frowned slightly, guessing. "That sounds dangerous. Logic leads to truth. Guessing leads to mistakes." Aiden nodded. "True, guessing can lead to mistakes, but sometimes it leads to great discoveries. Many of our biggest inventions, our greatest ideas, began with a guess, a dream. Our people are not perfect, Commander, but we try, and when we fail, we learn and try again." Laritha sat back, thinking deeply. She had never heard anyone speak like this. In Zenari culture, mistakes were seen as weakness. But here was a human, calmly saying that mistakes were part of learning. She looked at Aiden carefully. "You speak of learning through failure. But what if failure brings harm?" Aiden's face grew serious. "Failure is always a risk. But if we fear failure too much, we will never try anything new. Humans have learned by risking, by dreaming beyond what we know." There was silence between them for a moment. Then Laritha asked quietly, "Do you believe your way is better than ours?" Aiden shook his head gently. "Not better, Commander. Just different. You have much we can learn from. Your wisdom, your order, your knowledge. But perhaps we have something to offer you too." Laritha looked away, her mind spinning with thoughts. Finally, she said, "Our people have always believed that pure logic leads to perfect answers. But now I wonder if we have closed our minds to other ways." Aiden smiled softly. "That's why I came, Commander. Not to prove that humans are better, but to learn from each other." Laritha looked back at him, her sharp eyes softening. "Perhaps there is wisdom in that." She stood and walked slowly to the window, looking out at the stars. "Dr. Cross, you have shown me something I did not expect. I was taught that other species have little to offer us. But you have given me a reason to think again." Aiden stood as well, moving beside her. "I'm glad, Commander. Imagine what we could do together, with your knowledge and our imagination. Lyritha smiled faintly. It is a strange thought, but perhaps a good one. As they stood together, the stars outside seemed to shine brighter, as if welcoming a new beginning. Then, after a pause, Lyritha turned to Aiden. There is something else I must ask. Of course, Aiden said kindly. She looked serious. If humans think this way, taking risks, breaking rules, how do you keep from destroying yourselves? Aiden's smile faded slightly. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we make mistakes that hurt us. But we also learn. We try to grow better. And that's why we reach out to others, to learn, to share, and to build a future together. Lyritha studied him quietly. Then she nodded. Perhaps that is the way forward. Not only for Ons, but for us too. Aiden smiled warmly. Together, Commander, we might be able to solve problems neither of us can solve alone. She looked out at the stars one more time. Perhaps it is time for Zenari and humans to walk the stars side by side. Aiden felt hope rise in his heart. For the first time since arriving on Zirian, he knew they had taken the first step toward friendship. And in that quiet room, two great minds from two very different worlds had finally begun to understand each other. The next morning, Commander Lyritha stood before the Zenari High Council. The tall, wise leaders of her people sat in a circle, their silver robes shining in the soft blue light. They listened carefully as Lyritha spoke. Honored Council, she said, the human, Dr. Aiden Cross, solved the most difficult Zenari mind puzzle. He did it in a way none of us could. I believe there is more to humans than we first thought. The council members looked at one another, whispering softly. One elder, Counselor Verishin, raised a hand. Commander, humans may think differently, but we are not sure if they are wise. Intelligence without wisdom is dangerous. Another counselor, Elira, added, if they take risks and break rules, how can we trust them with our secrets? With the knowledge of the stars, Lyritha nodded, understanding their fear. That is why I propose a new test. A test not of the mind, but of the heart. The counselors looked surprised. A test of the heart. Varshin repeated. What do you mean, Commander? I mean, Lyritha explained. We must see if the human has compassion, courage, and care for others, not just clever thinking. The council sat in silence, thinking deeply. Finally, Elira spoke. Very well, Commander. If you believe this test is needed, we will allow it. But if the human fails, we cannot continue talks with them. Lyritha bowed her head. I understand. She left the chamber, her mind serious. Aiden has shown his mind. Now he must show his heart. Later that day, Aiden was surprised when Lyritha invited him to a special garden inside Zirian. The garden was beautiful, full of glowing plants and soft streams of silver water. Lyritha led him to a quiet place under a large, shining tree. Commander, Aiden said, looking around, this place is amazing. Lyritha smiled slightly. It is a place for peace and thought. She looked serious now. But today, Dr. Cross, I have brought you here for another reason. Aiden looked at her, curious. What reason, Commander? She faced him directly. You have shown us your mind. Now I must know your heart. Aiden raised an eyebrow, surprised. My heart. Lyritha nodded. The council wants to see if humans care for others, if they act with kindness, not only cleverness. Aiden smiled gently. That is fair, Commander. What is the test? Lyritha led him further into the garden, where a group of Zenari children were gathered. They were playing near a small pond, laughing and chasing each other. But one young boy sat alone, looking sad and quiet. That is Renal, a boy who lost his parents in a space accident, Lyritha said softly. Since then, he has not spoken. He trusts no one. Aiden's heart felt heavy as he looked at the boy. I want to see if you, a stranger, can reach him, Lyritha said. Not with clever words, but with kindness. Aiden nodded, understanding. I will try, Commander. He slowly walked over to Rennell and sat down nearby, careful not to scare him. Hello, Aiden said gently. My name is Aiden. What's yours? The boy did not answer. He looked away, his small hands holding a glowing stone tightly. Aiden smiled softly. That's a beautiful stone. May I see it? Rennell looked at him for a moment but said nothing. Aiden did not push. He picked up a small rock near his feet. It was plain and gray. I have a stone too, Aiden said, showing it to Rennell. Not as pretty as yours, though. The boy looked at Aiden's stone, his eyes softening just a little. Aiden gently placed his stone on the ground. You know, he said quietly, on my planet, when I feel sad, I hold a stone like this. I tell it my worries, and sometimes it helps. Rennell blinked, still silent, but he was listening now. Aiden smiled. If you want, I can sit with you. You don't have to talk. We can just sit here and hold stones together. He leaned back and looked up at the glowing tree. After a while, Rennell slowly reached out and placed his stone next to Aiden's. Aiden smiled warmly, but said nothing. He let the boy decide what to do next. After a long pause, Rennell whispered, Do you do that on Earth? Talk to stones. Aiden smiled gently. Sometimes, it helps me feel not alone. Rennell looked at him, his eyes filled with tears, but also hope. Can you come sit with me again tomorrow? Aiden nodded. Of course. I would like that. Laritha watched from a distance, her sharp eyes soft with surprise. She had not expected the human to be so patient, so gentle. As Aiden walked back to her, she said quietly, You have passed the test, Dr. Cross. Aiden smiled humbly. Thank you, Commander. But I wasn't trying to pass. I just wanted to help. Laritha nodded, her heart touched. Perhaps humans do have something we need, not just minds, but hearts full of care. As they walked back together, the stars above seemed to shine brighter, as if they, too, believed in this new friendship. Days passed after Aiden Cross's gentle meeting with the Zenari boy, Rennell. News of what happened spread quickly through the Zirian. Many Zenari were surprised that a human, someone from a younger species, could show such kindness and patience. Commander Laritha walked through the halls of her ship, thinking deeply. She had watched Aiden's actions closely and had seen his honest care. Now she wondered what else humans could teach them. As she reached the main command deck, her officer Tarnak approached her, looking worried. Commander, we have received a distress signal from a Zenari science vessel near the asteroid belt, Tarnak said. A distress signal? Laritha asked, her eyes narrowing. Yes, Commander. They are trapped. Their engines are damaged, and an asteroid storm is heading toward them. If we don't act fast, they will be lost. Without wasting a second, Laritha turned to the pilot. Set course for the science vessel. Maximum speed. The Zirian began to move quickly through space, stars flashing past the windows. But as they rushed to help, Laritha had an idea. She turned to Tarnak. Send a message to Dr. Aiden Cross. Ask him to meet me on the command deck at once. Soon, Aiden arrived, looking curious. Commander, you wanted to see me? He asked. Laritha nodded. Yes, there is a Zenari ship in danger. An asteroid storm is coming. We are going to rescue them, but it may not be easy. Aiden frowned thoughtfully. How bad is the storm? Very bad, Laritha replied. Our ships are strong, but the asteroids are large and fast. If we make one mistake, we could be destroyed too. Aiden looked at the star map on the screen. He could see the science vessel, small and alone, surrounded by hundreds of moving rocks. Commander, Aiden said, on Earth, we sometimes guide ships through dangerous storms at sea. Maybe I can help. I know how to think around problems like this. Laritha studied him for a moment, then gave a small smile. Very well, Dr. Cross. Stand with me. Let us face this storm together. As the Zirian reached the edge of the asteroid field, everyone on the command deck grew silent. Huge rocks spun through space, crashing into each other and sending smaller pieces flying in all directions. There, Tarnak pointed. The science vessel. On the screen, the small ship was struggling, trying to move but clearly stuck. Shields up, Lyrith, they ordered. The Zirian's blue shields flared to life as small asteroids began hitting them. We have to move carefully, the pilot said. One wrong move, and we'll be hit. Everyone looked to Lyritha for orders, but she turned to Aiden. Dr. Cross, how would a human handle this? She asked calmly. Aiden looked at the screen, thinking quickly. Commander, if we move in a straight line, we'll be hit for sure. But if we move like... He paused, thinking of the right words. Like a river flowing around stones, we can avoid the biggest ones. We need to move with the storm, not against it. Lyritha nodded, understanding. Pilot, adjust our course. Follow Dr. Cross's idea. The ship began to move in a strange path, weaving left and right, following the flow of the asteroids. Slowly, carefully, they got closer to the trapped science vessel. But suddenly, a huge asteroid appeared right in their path, spinning fast. Commander, Tarnak cried. We can't avoid it. Aiden's mind worked fast. What if we use the ship's thrusters to push sideways? Not forward, sideways. Lyritha gave the order immediately. Do it. The pilot pressed the controls, and the Zirian slid sideways through space, just missing the giant rock. The crew let out a breath of relief. Commander, Aiden said, smiling a little. Sometimes thinking sideways saves the day. Lyritha gave him a rare smile. I see that now. Finally, they'd reached the science vessel. Prepare tractor beam, Lyritha said. A soft blue light shot out from the Zirian, locking onto the damaged ship and pulling it safely away from the asteroid storm. Once they were clear, everyone on the command deck cheered. You did well, Dr. Cross, Lyritha said. Without your help, we might not have saved them. Aiden looked out at the stars. We did it together, Commander. Lyritha nodded, her respect for the human growing stronger. As the rescued ship followed them back to safety, Lyritha thought deeply. Humans do not only have strange minds and kind hearts, they are brave too. Perhaps they are ready to stand with us among the stars. She turned to Aiden. Dr. Cross, I think it is time we tell the Council what we have learned. Aiden smiled, hope shining in his eyes. I agree, Commander. It's time. As they flew through space, side by side, it was clear that something had changed. A new friendship had begun, and together they would face whatever the universe held. The stars above Zirian shined brighter than ever as Commander Lyritha and Dr. Aiden Cross returned from their rescue mission. The Zenari science vessel followed close behind, safe because of Aiden's quick thinking. The ship's crew was still talking about what had happened. Many Zenari now looked at Aiden with new eyes, not as a simple human, but as a friend, a brave and kind soul who had helped them in their darkest moment. As they approached the great floating city of the Zenari, Lyritha turned to Aiden. You have shown us what humans are truly made of, she said with a soft smile. Now it is time for the High Council to decide if our people can walk together into the future. Aiden nodded, feeling a mix of hope and worry. I understand, Commander. I just hope they can see that humans want peace, not war. Lyritha looked thoughtful. I believe they will, but you must speak from your heart. Soon, they stood once again in the Hall of Wisdom, where the Zenari High Council waited. The elders sat in a great circle, their eyes watching Aiden closely. The eldest, Counselor Varishin, stood first. Dr. Cross, he said in a calm voice, we have heard of your actions, how you saved our people from the asteroid storm, and we know you reached the heart of young Renault, when no one else could. Aiden bowed his head respectfully. But now, Varishin continued, we must know what you seek. Why have you come to us? What does humanity truly want? The hall grew silent. All eyes were on Aiden. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. Honored Council, he began, I know humans are new to the stars. We are not as wise or as advanced as you, but we are learning. We dream of reaching out, of finding friends beyond our world. He looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of each counselor. We don't want to fight. We don't want to take what isn't ours. We want to share, to learn, and to grow. And maybe we can help each other. Because even though humans are not perfect, we have something to offer. Our courage, our care for others, and our hope. There was a soft murmur in the hall. Some counselors nodded slightly. Aiden continued, his voice steady. When I helped Rennell, I wasn't thinking about passing a test. I saw a boy who was hurting and I wanted to help. When we saved the science vessel, I didn't do it to prove myself. I did it because life is precious, no matter what planet you are from. He paused, then said quietly, if you give humanity a chance, we will prove that we can be true friends to the Zenari. Not because we are the smartest or the strongest, but because we care. Silence fell again. Then Counselor Illyra stood, her voice soft but strong. Dr. Cross, she said, your words are simple, but they are true. You have shown us more than words. You have shown us actions of kindness and bravery. Varishin nodded, looking at Lyrathe, who gave a small, hopeful smile. Finally, Varishin turned to Aiden. Dr. Cross, he said formally, the Zenari High Council has decided. We will open friendship talks with humanity. You have earned our trust. Aiden felt a wave of relief and happiness. Thank you, honored council. I will not let you down. Later, as the meeting ended, Lyratha walked with Aiden through the glowing halls of Zirian. You did well, Dr. Cross, she said, her usual serious tone softer now. You have done what many thought was impossible. You have built a bridge between our worlds. Aiden smiled. Thank you, Commander. But I couldn't have done it without your guidance. She stopped and looked at him thoughtfully. Perhaps, but it was your heart that opened the way, not mine. They stood together, watching the stars outside the great window. What happens now? Aiden asked. Now, Lyratha said with a gentle smile, we begin a new journey. Together. In the days that followed, humans and Zenari began working side by side. Aiden introduced them to Earth scientists and leaders through peaceful talks. The Zenari, in turn, shared their wisdom of the stars. Young Rennell, once so quiet and lonely, now laughed and played with both Zenari and human children. The Zenari science vessel that had been saved was repaired, and its crew visited Earth, amazed by its blue skies and green forests. As for Aiden, he stayed on Zirian for many months, learning from the Zenari and helping build trust between the two worlds. He and Lyratha became good friends, often sharing ideas late into the night. One evening, as they stood watching Earth from the observation deck, Lyratha turned to Aiden. You know, she said, when I first met you, I thought humans were too wild, too unwise to stand with us. Aiden chuckled. And now? She smiled, looking at the Earth's bright colors. Now, she said, I see that sometimes it is the wild and hopeful hearts that change the universe. Aiden smiled, feeling proud and hopeful. Yes, Commander, he said softly. Together, we can do great things. And as they stood there, side by side, watching two worlds growing closer, the stars above seemed to shine a little brighter, as if they too believed in the power of friendship, hope, and unity. The beginning of a new chapter for both humanity and the Zenari. A future written among the stars.